Welcome, everyone, to the variety show Without a Clue. Guests from all over the world come from all walks of life and all careers to come on and tell us about themselves and give us a little bit of their insight. So grab a seat, relax, and listen, because this is the Leo Effects. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another exciting episode. Joining me today is a man of experience. Lots and lots of experience. His name is Stanley Livingston. How are you doing today, Stan?
Great, Ray. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for coming. So the first thing that I'd like to kind of cover here is what would you say you're most known for?
My three sons. I mean, undoubtedly, on my tombstone,
Yeah.
they're probably going to have blade chip on my three sons. That's what he's known for. Yeah, I saw the way that impacted Fred MacMurray's career, which was a much bigger career than mine. He'd done about 100 movies by the time My Three Sons came along and continued to do big feature films while he was doing My Three Sons. But when that day for him finally arrived in 93 when he passed away. You know, when I look at the obit column or the headline, in a lot of magazines and newspapers that day, it said Fred MacMurray, quintessential dad, starred in the long-running TV series My Three Sons. Didn't mention a thing about Double Indemnity, The Egg and I, Kane Mutiny, The Apartment, Absent-Minded Professor, Son of Blubber, The Shaggy Dog. Those were all omitted. You know, My Three Sons basically eclipsed everything that he had done. So I'm assuming I'm going to have the same fate, which, nice to be remembered for something. So that's pretty cool.
Hopefully through doing these shows, the podcasts, and, because you and I talked a little bit before we started recording, so I would hope to get that information out there to people too. So maybe you'll be remembered for something else besides just that.
There's always hope.
There's always hope.
Actually, yeah, I've got a few other things that I'm remembered for. Actually, there was a big Western movie that I was into about, I think we did it in 63, 64, called How the West Was Won, which went on to be an enduring Western. It's about 3 hours long and starred just about everybody that was in Hollywood at the time. You know, Jimmy Stewart, Henry Fonda, Richard Widmark, John Wayne, Gregory Peck. Just about anybody who was anybody was in that film. And, when you're a kid, you kind of don't realize that, well, as a teenager. But, yeah, that movie's really endured. And actually about once a year, it was also the last Cinerama film made in the Cinerama process, which is an ultra widescreen process.
Mm-hmm.
And every year at the ArcLight Cinerama Dome, it's one of the two remaining Cinerama theaters left in the United States. They usually show the movie once a year. In fact, I was just up there about 2 weeks, and I'm practically the only one left from the film. So I usually introduce the film to the audience every year.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Nice. That's a good way to kind of remember everything and pay homage to everybody that you worked with.
Yeah, it was, for me, a great experience. I mean, to be honest, that was the real reason I wanted to be an actor when I was a kid. I saw those cowboys and their six-shooters and horses. That's for me. Well, when I was a kid, I just seemed to not be the type they wanted in Westerns. I really never got cast on one. The closest I came to it was right out of the gate. The first thing I think I ever did was a Roy Rogers Toy Lariat commercial with Roy Rogers. So that was like, for me,
wow.
I thought my career was going to go right into a Western. And then it basically, I guess that was probably about 1955, 56. And until 1963, I didn't do another Western.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, all my friends did Westerns. Johnny Crawford, he got The Rifleman. And a couple other kids I knew were like Fury and, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, at least you
ended
endured.
Up on these. I did, my route was through wholesome family shows, starting off with like Ozzie and Harriet and I did a couple of Dennis the Menace and other shows that were on in that era. I can't even remember them all anymore, but
Right.
which all led to me doing a TV pilot for Jackie Cooper called Skippy, which was a movie he was starred in when he was a kid and got nominated for an Oscar. He was actually the youngest person ever nominated for an Oscar till the movie Kramer versus Kramer came along, and the kid in that, his name was Justin Henry, if I remember right, got nominated for an Academy Award. And Skippy, I believe, won the Academy Award that year as Best Picture. So,
Wow.
he was by then a director and still a TV and movie star. And I was working next door in Ozzie and Harry and somehow wandered onto his set. And I remember he came up to talk to me, probably to find out where my mother was, why I was unattended, and wanted to meet my mom. And I remember saying to him, "Hey, am I in trouble?" And he's like, no, you're not in trouble. And met my mom. And then about 3 months later, I was filming this TV pilot for him called Skippy, which ended up not selling or not going anywhere because he ended up getting another series, and I think he put it on the back burner. But that freed me up to go do My Three Sons. And because of the film that we had on me from carrying that TV series, was enough to convince the producers that I was the kid they were looking for the part of Chip. So that's the long story about how I got there.
That's amazing. Yeah, there ain't nothing wrong with a long story on this show. The more detail, the better.
Great. All right.
That's fantastic, though. I mean, to get into it as a kid and you've gone this whole time doing all this, that's really a testament to your staying power, as it were.
Yeah. I had no idea. I don't think anybody did in those days when you did TV series work. It was always a crapshoot.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, you could do a pilot like Skippy that never saw the light of day again, or you can end up in a TV series that went on and became the second longest running sitcom ever on TV.
Yeah.
So, My Three Sons ran in its original prime time run, 12 years and 380 episodes. So second only to Ozzie and Harriet, that went, I think it was 14 years and about, 435 segments or something, episodes.
Goodness.
So yeah, you never know what's in store for you or how long your job is going to last. Like I said, and even when we were doing My Three Sons, it wasn't a given at any time or any year that we were coming back.
Right.
I guess we're coming back again. I just got a telegram. Welcome back from William Paley.
Was that something that happened a lot to you? You were all geared up to do something, and then it just kind of blew away into the wind?
I think that happens, to every actor at every stage. Even well-known actors that, you never hear those stories, but behind the scenes, they're vying for a part or want to work for a director, and it sounds like they're in the running, and then all of a sudden you find out you're not in the running.
No.
Or that the part went to the guy who was like I guess you'd call him your competitor.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm sure, even at the movie star level, that goes on. There's people who want to work with certain directors, but then somebody, more popular than you at the moment, you might have been popular the year before, but now there's a new kid in town and everybody wants to work with him.
Right.
So,
yep. I can
we're all,
understand that.
Yeah. Well, even when I was before My Two Sons and at the time of My Two Sons, there was a few kids in Hollywood that, I competed with for parts. And, that was a good part. If you didn't get one part, you would probably get another one. And or they would be working and couldn't even go out on the interview. So you would get the part just through default, basically.
Yeah.
You looked like him and they wanted him, but he was unavailable.
Yep, that works.
And then there's other times you want a part, and they may have wanted you, but you're, tied into something contractually, and, you just precluded from doing it. It's kind of probably one of the most famous stories of that was Tom Selleck. He's a Magnum PI, and Indiana Jones was written for him. That's who they wanted. couldn't get out of the contract to go do it. So, wow, they got stuck with Harrison Ford.
Oh, darn.
Yeah, which cemented Harrison Ford, but I'll just tell you, he wasn't the first choice. Even though he had done, 3 Star Wars movies and a bunch of films in between those Star movies, George Lucas was still looking elsewhere.
Right. Wow.
Yeah,
So,
well, that's even with American Graffiti and Star Wars, that's how that was.
yeah.
He wasn't supposed to be in Star Wars either. He was actually George Lucas's carpenter at his house. And but he asked him, "Can you do me a favor?" Because he knew he was, picking up roles as an actor. He said, I got to have somebody to read with these actors. I've got a bunch of actors coming. Do you think you could read with them? And he agreed to do that. And if you ever listen to the auditions, you can hear his voice. He's the guy doing lines with them off screen or off camera.
Right.
And they were having trouble casting the Han Solo part. It wasn't even George Lucas. It was somebody who was there. One of the casting people go, "Why not that guy, man? That guy's like really good. He's been here every day, and
he can read."
He gets the kind of sarcastic, personality you were looking for. And, it was right before his eyes. But that's always the way it works. It's right before your eyes, and you don't see it.
If only we could all be so lucky.
Yeah, well, that's what they say. Half the battle's just getting in the door.
Right.
Right. Or and then sometimes finding out about the interview so you can try and get in that door. That's very difficult, and probably even more so these days. And, the number of people in the industry has grown exponentially in terms of productions and also in terms of actors. But, there's never enough work.
Well, that was going to be the next thing that I kind of led into is, with your breadth of experience, obviously when you got into it, you were fairly young, but you've been doing this for quite a while now. Is there any kind of tip or trick that you have for people that are trying to get into this business?
Yeah, well, the biggest tip of all, you have to go learn the acting part of it. That's a given. If you don't have a real deep-seated desire or drive to be an actor, I'd say don't even do it, because it's so hard and, so confusing, and sometimes can take so long to get there. There's a few people that break in immediately, but, they're got just the smallest percentage of people. I can't even call it a percentage, probably a 1/10 of 1/1,000,000th of a percent.
Oh, wow.
You need to be armed with that. But the thing that seems to escape, all actors, at least at the beginning of their career, how important understanding the business side of the business is. Mm-hmm. Now, that being said, how do you understand it when you don't know what to do or where to go? In other words, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
Unlike other businesses where if you're going to fly an airplane, you don't know anything about airplanes, but you can go, learn how to fly one and get some lessons. That still doesn't mean you understand airplanes. Doesn't mean you understand how to fly an airplane into an airport without killing yourself, because there's rules, regulations, things you need to know.
Yeah.
And unless you have that course too, learning how to fly is worthless.
Right.
You're going to get yourself. Well, like that's the way it is with acting. People go off to acting school for 2 years, 4 years. They spend anywhere from $10,000. Well, as we were discussing before the show, up to could be $100,000. They went to Yale or Harvard or big name college, UCLA, USC, and come out knowing everything about acting when you're on stage or when you're in front of a camera, and nothing about the business side. They know the obvious, which is I need a headshot, I need to have a reel, and how do you get a reel if you haven't worked? There's all these dichotomies there.
Mm-hmm.
The Screen Actors Guild, I need to join the Screen Actors Guild, but then again, do you really at the beginning of your career? Some people make the mistake of joining after their first job because they're eligible, and then only come to find out you can't do any non-union work, which is probably more than half the work available to a new actor is non-union, but you're precluded from that. And if the union finds out, you're thrown out of the union. So you just boxed yourself into a situation that you thought was good. That's what I said. There's so many mistakes you can make, and they're, because you're new. How many people know somebody that could really teach them what it is. You know, if you've known an actor who's been doing this for 30 years successfully, you know, that person might be able to relate all these little bugaboos to you. But, you know, for the average Joe, they just have this dream and a desire, want to do it. But because there's nobody there to answer the questions or to tell them this is how you go about doing it. Oh, be careful. Don't do this. Whatever you do, don't do this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it feels logical that you would want to do that, but it can be a thing that doesn't work for you know, maybe even getting a manager. You know,
Yeah.
Of course, you need an agent if you can get one, and you can get one to believe in you. But why would you, at the beginning of your career, need to manage? There's nothing to manage.
This is true.
And if you do get a manager, here's another thing you might want to, you know, there's different kinds of managers. You
Right.
know, there's managers that have been there and doing it forever, and they're probably not interested in you if you're starting out. And then there's managers that are just starting out. And, you know, why would you want to be with them? They probably have no contacts, and that's what you want out of a manager. You know, you don't care about the guy. You want to know what contacts do you have that my agent doesn't have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's going to be taking more money from you than the agent is. So there's a lot of guys collecting checks out there, you know, based on the work of some actor, if they're lucky enough to get work, than the agent takes. So, you know, as I say, there's so many things, especially at the beginning of the career, where you can make mistakes that are literally fatal. That you know, if you do them and you're in the room and you make a big mistake in there, it's sounds like a big business, but it's small. The casting people all know each other and they talk to each other, as do the producers. That, you know, if you come in and you're inexperienced or really not ready to go yet, or you don't really know how to read right, you know, the word gets around very quickly, and you can't get back in that door again. You know, and it may take you a long time, you know, for people to have the confidence in you, because the way it works is when an agent or a manager sends you in to meet the casting director on some show, that's the casting liaison for them, working for the producer, looking for actors to fill roles, and you come in and you don't know what you do. It's a horrible reflection on your agent or your manager who sent you in, because it means they didn't know what they're doing. And that casting director, as soon as you walk out of the room, the director producers are going to turn to them and go, why'd you bring that person in? They didn't know what they're doing. You know, they have no idea what they're doing or what we're looking for, or how to conduct themselves in an interview or an audition. And your job may be on the line then, because everybody is vouching for everybody. So that's why it behooves you to know all this stuff before you go in. And unfortunately, the industry is like about 100 years old, and God knows how many people have taken acting classes, or great actors, or, you know, pretty good actors or mediocre actors, but have no idea, you know, about, like I said, all these things that are categorized. I call it business. What it really is the non-performance skills. The performance skills are what you learn in college or your acting school. The non-performance skills are the ones of how you meet people, what to say, what not to say, when to join the union, when not to join the union. And, you know, like I said, there's a million things. You know, people think it's only get an agent, get a reel, get a headshot, try and get an agent, try and get in the union. So there's 5 or 6 things. Well, if there's only 5 or 6 things that comprise the business of acting, why does this particular program have 60? So that'll tell you you're missing quite a big picture of the puzzle. But anyway, people that are interested in that, we should be up and running again by the beginning of the year. Like I mentioned before, we had a DVD program that was put together and involved over 100 people from the industry, everyone from actors to directors to producers, executive producers, showrunners, agents, managers, casting directors, president of the Screen Actors Guild, president of the DGA, different members who sat on various boards at both of those organizations. And they're the ones teaching this program called The Actor's Journey. So after the beginning of the year, if you go looking for theactorsjourney.com, it'll be up and the material will be there, and it'll now be streaming material instead of DVD based. So we're trying to move ourselves into the future as well. People can watch the whole thing, or, you know, it originally came on 8 DVDs, so they were about an hour and a half long each. So you could watch the contents of any one of those as like a unit, or you can watch any one of the individual segments. So, as I mentioned, there's 60 of those, so there's a lot to learn.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot, way more to learn than even, I mean, I didn't know any of that, so I'm sure there's other people out there that are trying to break into this, and they're just as clueless, and they're listening to you right now saying, oh, I better Google search that. I need that program.
Yeah, well, you can go to YouTube right now and kind of get a taste. We put up some material from it. Like I said, there's some clips there and show you, some of the people that are involved in it. A lot of them were friends of mine who'd worked in the industry, for years. Sherman Hemsley, Michael York, directors like Richard Donner did all the Lethal Weapon movies, and
wow,
a ton of other films. Yeah,
star-studded
crew. Yeah,
crew
there's some
you
pretty
got there.
big names. Yeah, well, that's what I was saying. I think out of the 100 people used, I think it was about 45 or 50 of them have either been nominated for or won Emmy, Academy, or Golden Globe Awards. So they're certainly recognized by the industry. And these are people that had mastered the system because they'd been in it for 10 or 20 years. And, even at that point, you're always learning something new.
Yeah.
Or something changes. It's like your headshot. In the old day, you would go get a photographer. He'd take some pictures of you. You'd select the best ones or the ones you think are appropriate for you or for what kind of work you're trying to do. Because, one size headshot doesn't fill all needs, There's certain ones when you do commercials. There's other ones when you're doing TV, and still other ones needed when you're doing movie business. So there's that. But, what's changed is the internet. It used to be when a casting director wanted to see you, he'd call an agent. And your agent would, basically send a headshot over, usually by courier. And then that stopped, and there were, you could transmit the picture finally through the internet. Mm-hmm. So that became it. But, now what the casting directors who work for companies do is they, will go online and, from an agency, they'll receive a link to that agency's files. And they'll look through their pictures of the actors that they, think they may want to hire from there. But, your pictures, that's why they call it a thumbnail. It's about as big as your thumbnail.
Yeah.
And in the old days, it's like, what is a good picture? Even when you held the 8x10 in your hand, you wanted it to reflect, on you. You didn't want it to be out of focus. It had to look a certain way, or should it be in color, or should it be in black and white? Mm-hmm. There's all these little things. But now, they're not even looking at that. You're looking at something about the size of a thumbnail, and it's on a page maybe with 20 other pictures, and it's got to pop more so than it did before. I mean, how do you make like a little thumbnail stand out from the other 19 people on the page?
Yeah.
So you can see it's critical. And, people go, well, I'll just go to this photographer. Well, that's great. Yeah, it's a guy with a camera. But what's his day job? Is he, do this for a living? Or is he, shooting pictures of fruit and vegetables for Kroger's Market? That's his day job. So you don't want to come out looking like a turnip.
Yeah, exactly.
It'll look me like a turnip.
Maybe that'll make you stand out, though.
Yeah, could be. But... Yeah, especially if they're doing, what was it, The Thing. They're looking for a guy to play the carrot at the end that James Arness played.
Oh, geez.
But, so you need to, as opposed to going in and have the photographer interview you need to know how to interview him and look at his portfolio to determine whether he can do justice for you. Because you're going to probably fork over anywhere, at minimum $300, and that would be considered inexpensive. You're usually looking more around 5 or 6, and there's people that are really good that are charging pretty close to $1,000 for 7 shots and maybe a little bit of retouching and all that.
Yep.
But that's the problem when you don't have these skills at the beginning. You get snookered a couple times, and you got. And some casting director goes, you don't look like your pictures. You have a goatee, but you don't have a goatee here. And what about the green in your hair? You just wasted my time. I can't bring you into the office because you don't look like your picture.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
There's a reason for that. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. These are all the small things that you learn over years or decades of doing this, of what to do, what not to do, where to spend your money, where not to spend it, so you're not wasting it or having to do it 2 or 3 times. Mm-hmm. There's just, the whole thing is just that's what it's about. That's what I call the business side of acting,
Gotcha.
or the non-performance skills. It's unfortunately a pretty big thing, and really will determine whether you ever get to use those other skills which you spent $30,000 to $100,000 on.
Right. Well, we are drawing up on the end of the show here, surprisingly. Like, that 30 minutes goes pretty quick when you're listening to good stories and learning everything there is to know.
Yeah.
So,
here we'll have to do part two.
Right. Here in this last little bit, I was wondering if you might want to go through and let everybody know where they can go to find your DVDs or more information about you and your career.
Yeah, if they want to find out more about me, I've been doing this for 65 years. In fact, the show is on My Three Sons is actually going to celebrate its 60th year next year. We're hoping to do something with the Paley Center for Media. They kind of archive all these old shows and stuff like that. But yeah, who knew it would be 60 years? They can find out about me by going to StanleyLivingston.com. There's a lot of material, things that I've been in, a list of credits, things on, like I said, how the West is won, which is kind of the other thing that kind of later in life that kind of caught on again. It got remastered back in 2012 and found a whole new audience. So that's going on. If you want to find out what I'm doing production-wise, you go to firstteamproductions.com. And, that website will show you, some of the stuff I've worked on. It's not everything, but, we put up a few things and then stuff that we're working on right now that's in development. And a couple of things that are in development that aren't on there. And it's got a fairly complete also list of credits for me, which goes on and on and on and on since I've been doing this for so long. And primarily been working as a producer director, I guess since I was about 30 full time. So been doing this a long time. And I think it's what allowed me to do that other program, the one I was telling you about called The Actor's Journey, which if somebody wants to find out about that, the website, like I said, will go back up in January, but you can go to YouTube and type in The Actor's Journey, and there's some clips there you can see, and they're kind of pulled from some of the material that's in that program. And we also did a program too while we did The Actor's Journey. We did a supplemental program called The Actor's Journey for Kids and Teens.
Oh,
and
neat.
So it's basically for the age ranges from infant on up to 17 years old. That's the demarcation line, and once you turn 18, you're on your own. You're doing it for yourself. Your parents aren't involved. So that one's just The Actor's Journey. But The Actor's Journey for Kids is not really for the kids. The DVDs weren't made for them. I mean, the program was actually made for the parents,
right?
Father and mother of the
sense.
kids, since they're the ones driving them to and fro, and probably more than likely it's their idea that their kid be in show business. So it's the same thing, and probably just as critical to know that material, because although horrible things can happen to you on both sides of being 18, the things that happen to kids shouldn't happen to a dog. The dogs have more regulations in the industry, the animals, than how kids are handled. So it's really incumbent upon the parent, to really learn this stuff too, so they don't get their kid in trouble, get themselves in trouble. And, all kinds of ways of looking at it.
Yeah. Well.
And we'll just hope My Three Sons keeps going. Maybe another 50 years. Who knows?
There you go. Well, Mr. Livingston, I just want to say before we sign off here that it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. I really appreciate you coming and bestowing your knowledge upon me and all these fine listeners out there in the digital world.
Thanks, Ray. I appreciate that. And just trying to do my part, help people out best we can,
Yeah.
It's
you had said it
industry,
before.
But
yeah, you had said it before. We're all kind of helping each other out.
Yep, that's the way it goes. And you're hoping to catch up with like-minded people who don't mind, helping you,
Exactly. We all got to get our start somewhere.
We do. Yeah, we do. Well, thanks again, and I appreciate you having me on. And I look forward, if we can do it again sometime, we'll do it.
Absolutely, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for stopping in and having a listen. Again, this has been Stanley Livingston. He's a great guy. Make sure to go and check out his site and check out the things on YouTube. And once the DVD site comes back up, I will try to post a link for that as well. Thank you very much, and we'll see you later. Hey everyone, this is Ray. Thank you for listening. It's because of listeners like you that I'm able to keep this show going. For more of my shenanigans, check out Realm of the Mist Entertainment, where I'm co-host to Breaking the Fourth Wall, War of the Stars, a Star Wars podcast, Lemmy Stormkiller on Four Corners of Hell, and finally, The Chronicler on Chronicles of the Lost Realm. You can also find me at Shattered Dungeons on YouTube, playing an awesome game called Shattered Dawn. For contact information or to be on the show, check out the leoeffects.wixsite.com/podcast today.